In 1970, one man didn't just win the World Cup. He redefined what a human being could do with a football. Welcome to DJ Codesa Entertainment, where we break down every iconic moment in FIFA World Cup history, goal by goal, legend by legend. Today, we are going back to Mexico. 1970, the most colorful, most technically brilliant, and most watched World Cup the world had ever seen. And at the center of it all, a 29-year-old Brazilian who had already won 2 World Cups, survived 4 years of brutal defenders trying to kick him out of the game, and arrived in Mexico with one final point to prove. His name was Edson Arantes do Nascimento. The world called him Pele. In 6 matches across this tournament, Pele contributed to 12 goals, scoring 4 and assisting 8, as Brazil dismantled every team in their path with a style of football so beautiful that FIFA later called it the greatest team performance in World Cup history. They won the final 4-1 against Italy. They lifted the Jules Rimet Trophy for the 3rd time and kept it forever. In this video, we are going to walk through every single one of those 12 contributions. We'll break down the technique, the movement, the decision-making, and the moments where Pele reminded the entire planet why he was, and many still argue remains, the greatest footballer who ever lived. Stay with us. This one is worth it. Before we get to the goals, let's understand the journey. Because in 1970, Brazil didn't just win matches. They announced themselves from the very first whistle. Group stage, Group 3. Brazil's opening match was against Czechoslovakia. Final score, Brazil 4-1. Pelé scored once and set up 2 others. But the moment everyone remembers wasn't a goal. It was a near miss that the world couldn't stop talking about. More on that in a moment. Next up, England, the defending champions. The match many neutrals called the real final before the final. Both teams were unbeaten. Both were playing the best football of any team in the tournament. Brazil won 1-0, but the scoreline tells you nothing about what actually happened on that pitch. We'll get to that story too. Romania came next in the final group game. Brazil won 3-2, with Pelé bagging a brace. 2 goals that showed different sides of his genius. By the end of the group stage, Brazil had scored 10 goals in 3 games. No team at this World Cup came close to matching that. Quarterfinal, Peru. Brazil 4-2. Pelé with an assist. Peru gave them a fight, but Brazil's quality was simply on another level. The fluid, fast-moving passing game, what the Brazilians called Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game, was working perfectly. Semi-final, Uruguay. Now this was different. Uruguay, the only team that had ever beaten Brazil at a World Cup, the Maracanazo of 1950, were their opponents. The psychological weight was enormous. Brazil won 3-1. Pelé scored, and in the process, produced one of the most outrageous moments in World Cup history. A dummy that left the goalkeeper flat on the floor without even touching the ball. The final, Italy. Brazil 4-1. The greatest World Cup final performance ever. Pelé, Carlos Alberto, Gerson, Jairzinho, who became the only player ever to score in every single match of a World Cup. But none of it would have been possible without the man wearing the number 10 shirt. Let's break down every goal. The goal breakdown. 12 contributions in 6 matches. For goals, 8 assists. Let's go through all of them. Goal 1, versus Czechoslovakia, minute 24, right foot finish. Goal 1, Brazil versus Czechoslovakia, 24th minute. A flowing team move cuts open the Czech defense. The ball arrives at Pelé's feet on the edge of the box. A tight angle. Heavy pressure from a defender arriving fast on his right side. What does he do? He doesn't rush. He waits, just half a second longer than any other striker would. Lets the defender commit, then drives a low, controlled right foot finish across the goalkeeper into the far corner. The technique here is patience. Most strikers at this level would rush the shot under that pressure. Pelé trusted his body, trusted the angle, and executed with perfect composure. The goalkeeper had no chance. What makes it extraordinary? That half second of calm under pressure is what separates great strikers from all-time great strikers. Goal 2, versus Romania, minute 19 penalty. Goal 2, Brazil versus Romania, 19th minute. A penalty. Now, penalties might seem simple, but watch how Pelé approaches this one. No run-up theatrics. A short, controlled approach. He reads the goalkeeper's body language, waits for the slightest lean, and places the ball low to the right with absolute precision. Goalkeepers in 1970 had no data, no scouting video, no penalty analysis. They were guessing. Pele was calculating. Goal 3 versus Romania, minute 59 header. Goal 3. Same match, Romania. 59th minute. A header. And not just any header. A leaping, perfectly timed header from a cross delivered from the left flank. At 5'8", Pele was not tall by striker standards. But his timing in the air was extraordinary. He leapt before the defender, hung in the air a fraction longer, and powered the ball down into the net. Heading technique. For context, the power comes not from the neck alone, but from the whole upper body rotating forward through the ball. Watch any slow-motion clip of Pele heading. His whole torso is a weapon. Goal 4 versus Italy, minute 18, the final header. Goal 4. The World Cup final. 18th minute. Brazil versus Italy. This is the one. The opening goal of the greatest World Cup final ever played. Rivellino whips in a cross from the left. Pele gets ahead of his marker, Italian defender Tarcisio Bergnic, one of the best man markers in the world at the time, and meets the ball at the highest point of his jump. Bergnic later said, and this is one of football's most famous quotes, "I told myself before the game, he is made of skin and bones just like everyone else. But I was wrong. The header is powerful, directed, unstoppable." Brazil lead 1-0 in the World Cup final. And the Brazilian team that day would go on to score 3 more. But it was Pele who opened the door. Bergnic, I was wrong. He is not human. Now let's talk about the 8 assists, because this is where the 1970 Pele story gets really interesting. Most people remember Pele as a goal scorer, and he was. But in 1970, he evolved into something more dangerous, a creator. A player who could hold the ball under pressure, draw 2 or 3 defenders, and then release the killer pass at precisely the right moment. His assist for Carlos Alberto's final goal against Italy, the 4th, is widely voted the greatest team goal in World Cup history. 10 Brazilian players touched the ball before Carlos Alberto arrived at the far post to thunder it in. Pele received the ball, dummied twice, drew the last defender, and rolled it perfectly into space. He didn't need to score that goal. He chose to create something better. That is the mark of a truly great player, knowing when not to shoot. The famous save. But here is the moment from the 1970 World Cup that most people remember, and Pele wasn't even on the scoresheet for it. Brazil versus England. Group stage. June the 7th, 1970. Jairzinho bursts down the right and whips in a cross to the near post. Pele rises and gets a perfect connection, a firm, downward header aimed low into the bottom right corner. In real time, he's already raising his arms to celebrate. He shouts, and this is documented, "Golo." The word for goal in Portuguese. England's goalkeeper Gordon Banks dives to his right, his wrong side, gets down impossibly low, and somehow scoops the ball up and over the crossbar from below the turf with the back of his right hand. Pele stopped. He put his hands on his head. Later he said, "I thought that was a goal. I still don't know how he saved it." Banks called it the greatest save he ever made. Most football historians agree, not just the save of the tournament, not just the save of the decade, but widely regarded as the greatest save in the history of football. Think about what this moment reveals about the 1970 World Cup. Pele hit a header so perfect, so precisely placed, so technically flawless, that the only thing that stopped it from being a goal was the greatest individual save ever made by any goalkeeper. That is the standard of football we are talking about. Legacy and why it still matters. So why are we still talking about 1970, more than 50 years later? Because the numbers have never been matched. Miroslav Klose holds the all-time World Cup goals record with 16 goals across 4 tournaments. Ronaldo Nazario scored 15. Gerd Müller, 14. Pele scored 12 World Cup goals total across 3 tournaments, 1958, 1962, and 1970. But here is the context that matters. He was injured for large parts of 1962 and brutally kicked out of the 1966 World Cup by defenders who knew they couldn't stop him any other way. He was also playing in an era with no yellow card protection, no VAR, and no ban for repeated fouling. In terms of impact per match at a single World Cup, no player in history has come close to what Pele produced in Mexico in 1970. And the modern comparisons? Kylian Mbappe scored 8 goals at the 2022 World Cup, an extraordinary achievement. Ronaldo Nazario scored 8 in 2002. Klose scored 5 in 2006. But none of these players were simultaneously the creative engine, the goal scorer, the assist leader, and the psychological figurehead of their team the way Pelé was in 1970. Mbappe's 2022 campaign was brilliant, but France lost the final. Pelé's 1970 campaign was flawless. Brazil won every game, won the trophy, and did so playing football that, half a century later, coaches, analysts, and footballers still study, still reference, and still dream of replicating. Some records are statistical. Some records are cultural. Pelé's 1970 World Cup is both.